Wow, we haven't chatted in a while. Stuff has been happening.
Yes, it
We haven't
has.
even checked in really offline. We've been saving it for this.
Well, there's been
Where do you guys want to start?
let's see. Are there any socialists in the group here? Any communists? Any at all? Because to,
We
to
have.
hear the new strategy, apparently anybody who's not MAGA is not just a socialist, is now a communist. Any here? It seems appropriate to ask in McCarthy's Wisconsin, because
I was going to say,
we're going to that well
has
again.
Pat Kreitlow been replaced by Joe McCarthy here and the doing a little Red Scare on the
Well,
Wisconsin Politics Group Chat podcast?
Certainly is Derek Van Orden's new job. I mean, he took those marching orders, those goose stepping orders, right to heart. He jumped right into it and is, referring to people as communists now, not just socialists. And we'll see if that dog hunts. Spoiler alert, it won't.
Well, that's what they do. They are given a certain set of words to repeat and messages, short messages to repeat, and then you see them dutifully doing like good dogs, which is also what Tom Tiffany does, which is also what Tony Weed does. It's not representation.
They're good boys.
They're good boys.
Yeah. Good old
Yeah,
boys.
DBO's a little too good in that sense, where he just really takes it to the next level. It's almost impossible to even reason with anything he says because it's just so ridiculous. He seems to be, I don't know, nervous.
Yeah, he should be.
Well, or
Seems
just
on overdrive.
he's wired. He's always over caffeinated or over served something. He's just always on this thing when he's behind a keyboard or when he's busy insulting people. But he knows how to flip that switch, especially when there's a local news crew around. And suddenly he's the kindly grandfather. I'm just the kindly grandfather veteran next door. I like my motorcycle and I like farms and God bless America. And, far too many local TV stations fall for it. But, he can't come off that way all the time because at some point he's got to get behind a Twitter keyboard. It's his addiction. And then you get to see the real Derek Van Orden.
We've seen the clip, though, of him with the teacher in Washington, D.C., and the teacher's just trying to ask him some questions, and Van Orden is just blowing him off. At one point, he bumps into him rudely, makes him hold his motorcycle helmet, just the way that he treats people. So, I mean, that does happen.
Yeah,
There
he's
was
not a nice guy.
No, there was an internal poll that was released in Politico today on his district, and it was a Rebecca Cook poll, and it had some head-to-head stuff in it. But what I thought was interesting too is that his favorability is really rough for his district. It was at 30. I want to say it was 38% favorable to 53% unfavorable, net minus 15. For whatever there might be in the head-to-head, and we know that's going to be a closely contested district. Whether it's Cook +4, Van Orden +1. We know it's going to be close all the way until November. But the net negative for Van Orden in that district was pretty striking. I think Trump was a net -6 or 7 or something like that, and Van Orden net -15. And he has never been a particularly strong electoral performer in the two races that he did win. He did not outrun the top of the ticket there. And so, yeah, he's going to be in trouble, but we know that's going to be a toss-up district.
Can I use the word fatigue for that district? In other words, when Derek Van Orden was elected, there was some Democratic fatigue. Ron Kind had been there for many years, and Donald Trump's brand was, rising by and large. And now we've got Derek Van Orden fatigue because, again, 6 years ago when he was first running for this seat, he, much like Trump, years earlier, said, I'm going to be different. Can't we all just get along? And now, 4 years later, as an elected congressman, people realize, that was all bullshit. He has no desire, none whatsoever, to be bipartisan in any way, shape, or form. And people across the district have finally said, yeah, okay, that's who this guy is. Who else is out there?
Yeah, and he has no desire, seemingly, to meet with any actual constituents or real people in his district. And he claims to be a real guy. He's not DC, but he's turned into quite the DC elitist. Anytime he actually is showing up in public, it's when people from Washington fly out and he's courting them around, like Secretary of Agriculture, obviously the president,
And Howard
Vice
Lutnick
President
now.
Vance. He was just
Yep.
with Howard Lutnick out in La Crosse. He will only show up in public if it's with somebody from Trump's administration, I guess.
Yes.
So
He'll parachute in, like he occasionally will parachute into Eau Claire, and you won't know he's coming. And suddenly on the local news, well, there he is at a local business doing a roundtable. But of course, it's by invitation only. So no, there's not going to be any unscripted meeting with his constituents because, they're fed up with Congress right now.
Yeah, and you wouldn't want to project where you're going to be because protesters might show up because they're out there.
exactly, especially when you're scared of them.
We see the same thing in the 8th. We haven't seen Tony Weed.
Ever.
Dude has not shown up. He has done 0 town halls. He did 2 telephone town halls, but he was babysat for both of them. I mean, this is a guy who couldn't be more two-dimensional in character. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Sigh.
Derek Van Orden spent his 4th of July weekend seemingly just on Twitter the whole time. How did you guys spend your 4th of July weekend?
Offline, I'm happy to say, but doing a birthday, doing a wedding anniversary, doing an Independence Day for the country, and getting some time on the boat. Some people didn't make it out on the boat who said they might come out on the boat, Dr. Lyerly.
Happy birthday and anniversary, Pat.
Thank you. Hey, way to go.
Yeah.
It was a good weekend, with the exception of those sudden and in some cases tragic storms that came up, and
Scary.
hopefully that notwithstanding, people were able to enjoy the weekend, even if they couldn't enjoy it, say the way they could. Old man alert here. 50 years ago, when the bicentennial brought everybody together, the 250, not so much.
Not so much.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad I was not in DC for that Great American State Fair. It looked very, very lackluster, but
Very funny,
I mean,
It was
So many
hilarious.
funny
It
moments.
was, yeah.
Things like people having to take shelter in the African American History Museum. That was funny.
poetic, even, I would say.
Mhm.
Woke 2 has some surprises in it,
Yeah, there were some divine universe things happening, but
Everywhere, not just in D.C. When he went to the Black Hills to speak in front of Mount Rushmore, this again, a strong thunderstorm, hailstorm suddenly came out of nowhere. All Trump's weekend was missing was a plague of locusts, and that may not be far off his next big event.
I'm telling you guys, I think something about slingshotting around the moon with a woman on board after a mission named after like the actual Greek goddess instead of the god undid some curse.
We
I
can
like
only
this
hope.
theory. I want to hear more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could get real woo-woo. I won't right now, but maybe next time. I think there's
We
something
should have a
happening.
special segment. Kate gets woo-woo.
Yes,
group
I can
chat.
bust out the crystals.
There you go.
Not to be
Well, I've
like
got some magnets
Spencer
around
Pratt,
here
but-
somewhere. Yeah.
We all went through a crystals phase, right? Right, Pat?
If it was in the 70s, and I don't remember. So, we're all required to say we remember very little of the 70s, except the disco.
Pet rock.
So also what just happened, well, we had the 4th of July. It also is now, the third quarter of the year, which means that all campaign finance reports were due by all the different campaigns at every level here in Wisconsin on July 1st. I don't think they're actually, or they needed to, the fundraising was cut off on July 1st. I don't think they're due until the 15th. We haven't seen anybody's yet. Not that anybody's late, but does that tell you anything that we haven't seen anybody like parading around with any numbers yet?
You know what else we haven't seen? Like massive spending. We haven't seen big TV spends like you would expect if anybody had really big numbers. I don't know, Dan, I see you shaking your head.
I mean, I don't know of anything specific just yet, but I think you're right. I mean, if there was like a really big, clear, obvious fundraising haul, I feel like we would have seen something about it by now. But then again, it's the first day after July 4th weekend. That's not news you would exactly want to bury before a long holiday weekend. You're not going to Friday news dump some great fundraising totals or anything like that. So I don't think we would see that just yet. But there was some interesting final pushes for fundraising right before the deadline there. I think the person who made the most news on that of course, the person who was making the most news on everything is Francesca Hong and the fundraising that she did with Hassan Piker and Mike from PA, who I'm not really familiar with. But she raised, I think ended up being more than $90,000 just on a couple of Twitch streams right before the fundraising deadline. And, there was, of course, some reaction from other candidates, reaction from people throughout the kind of Wisconsin political landscape more generally. I saw that David Crowley expressed some, disagreement with going on that. I saw Kelda Royce did that as well. So I think that has been, a pretty interesting topic to see people react to. I know once Piker did some campaigning in Michigan, like that seemed to change some of the dynamics in the Michigan Senate race. We know Mallory McMorrow just dropped out of that race as well. So, interesting to see, kind of how that curveball, lands and how people respond to it. But I don't know. What did you make of some of the reactions to that last week?
I was not surprised at all at the Republican reactions. It's clearly reading from a script, same old playbook, shock and awe and pearl clutching. I was disappointed to see fellow Democrats in the race walking right into those traps. That's my own personal opinion.
I think they're all just trying to differentiate themselves right now. And Fran is enthusiasm. If I had one word to describe her campaign right now, it is enthusiasm. She is going for it. She is finding all of those little spaces where other people don't exist. And she is exploiting that in a really successful way. And this whole thing about democratic socialism and Mamdani and all of the other successful races, I mean, she's clever. You got to hand it to her.
Well, and when, for example, State Senator Kelda Royce tried to criticize Francesca for, doing fundraising with those two folks, the comment sections went, and again, that's not scientific, but Kristin, you tipped me off to this, and I went and looked, and yeah, the comment sections were decidedly against Kelda for calling that out, saying, how dare you try to stifle.
Even on Facebook?
Even on Facebook.
On Facebook, yes. Yeah.
That's no good.
Well, it's no good for a day and for the couple of comment sections. Again, does it translate into votes? Does it translate into enthusiasm? Or is this all a 2-week story and nobody's talking about it come August? Hard to say.
2 week, like 2 day, right?
The cycle goes so fast.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. And I think that's what Fran understands really well, too, is the news cycle's going to go crazy. The news cycle's going to news cycle and it's going to move on. And she's not afraid of a bad soundbite or a bad story or anything, because ultimately they keep talking about her. And so it's very interesting to watch a campaign where she's just like, no skin off my back. We're going to keep moving, where the others like get bogged down in some of this stuff. And it's like, guys, nobody. And also, we're in the primary right now with I still talk to people who don't even know who's running. So a lot of people are not paying attention to all of the different things that are happening right now. So I think it's a very interesting choice to put out statements on stuff like this.
Well,
Fran is running, though, with reckless abandon. She's got nothing to lose. Everybody else is playing it safe. I mean, Mandela's playing it very safe. Sarah Rodriguez playing it safe. But Fran is just like, sure, let's try this. Let's try that. It's exciting to watch. And I think that's why you see all of those comments, because people like it. It's different.
They like the authenticity, which, coming back to Michigan, is what ultimately pushed Mallory McMorrow out of the U.S. Senate race there. Is people saw that they said she was, had gotten taken over by the consultants and had her being very safe. And what people like about Fran and some of these other candidates is they just say right what's on their mind in the moment, even if it doesn't stick. Now, for the Hong campaign, that also includes, putting out a poll the other day that, again, showed her with, some pretty healthy numbers. And the undecided, Kristin, what did we see? It was something like 29% or something like that. And that's what made me suspicious of this poll, is the undecided among Democratic voters is not 29%. Dan, I'd argue it's still north of 50%. So that poll was a little suspect.
I did see that poll as well. Was released late Sunday night by like Wedgwood polls or something like that, which I had never heard of before. I actually asked Charles Franklin from the Marquette poll what he made of that. And I think he was also a little bit confused by it. He said, I didn't really know of this group. didn't really see, the full scope of details and the methodology. It seemed like a volunteer sample. He also said he was puzzled that they didn't seem to give the full candidate list for the Dem primary and combine other and undecided in the primary result. So they combined both. If it were, let's say it were, David Crowley and Kel DeRoy's Joel Brennan, combining that with the undecided and still being a fairly low number, like you said, Pat, also seemed a little bit confusing. So I'm taking that poll with not just a grain of salt, but the whole salt shaker. So I'm not really taking that much with that poll, but I think Hong certainly has some momentum continuing. I noted today that she is getting more. She's one of the only candidates in the race that has not had a television ad. But she is getting so much more press and so much more earned media and national media. So there was a big New York Times feature story that came out late last week about her campaign. There was a story today in Politico about her campaign. And I think the national media is doing their national media parachute thing where, hey, here's national trend here. Does it work in other area here? So, Democratic Socialists obviously had some big wins. And so it's like, all right, is this going to work in a swing state? And there's been so much talk this year about, is this the Democrats' Tea Party moment? Is this the insurgent DSA, flipping the script on the Democratic establishment? But I also think just for Hong and her campaign, it's just showing how differently different campaigns can work in this moment in 2026, where she's not going on TV, but she's still getting way more attention and earned media than so many of the other candidates in the race.
It feels a lot like the Wild Wild
you're
West,
gonna have to
doesn't
go
it?
on. What was that, Kristin?
It feels a lot like the Wild Wild West. When you think about these polls that are coming out, and then Fran, of course, grasps this poll because it's so favorable and puts it under social media to generate more enthusiasm. But is this poll good? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. What's happening in Kelshi and Polymarket? What's going on with old school polls? Because they take so much time and energy and money to put together. There's so much information out there. And just like everything else in the world right now, we have no idea what's good or what's bad or what's relevant.
Here's the other thing about Fran that I think she really understands, that in campaigning, and she also really understands governing and how it works and the policy things, but she understands that campaigning is a different sport and that perception is more important than reality. And so she's not going to sit there and overthink, well, should I share this poll that nobody's really heard of? She's just like, it's a good shot. We're putting it out. Which is very reminiscent also of the data center moratorium stuff, because I understand that is a lot more complicated and nuanced. And I just talked to Mandela about it, and he explained his whole thing. And if you can sit through the several minutes of that, it kind of makes sense. But the comment section on that too was just like, nope, he wouldn't say he supported a moratorium, And so Fran understands that in campaigns, people latch on to those small sample shots, small word, things like that, and they will just continue to build within them.
What you see is really how people lose re-elections. When you're running for something the first time, you can promise the moon and the stars, and then when it doesn't happen, or when you have to massage your message to say, well, we didn't want to be totally left out of the data center boom, and so I put these environmental protections in place. Well, nobody cares. You said there was going to be a moratorium. I'm not predicting that'll happen for Hong. What I'm saying is it's very easy to pick that shortest message, data center moratorium, and if you have a more nuanced message like Mandela Barnes does, by the time you explain it, like you said, the comment section is already like, oh, you wouldn't go with the 3-word answer, data center moratorium. I'm out. And it's an unfortunate part of our politics.
Yeah, I mean, when promises are also old school, though. It used to be back in the day that you would make a campaign promise and constituents would hold you to that. Now constituents forget about it, so campaign promises don't even matter anymore. I mean, look at Donald Trump. He's the one who's writing this playbook and teaching people like Fran exactly how to communicate, to win people over, to get what you want and not have to deliver on what you said.
And I do think she will try very hard to deliver on these things she's promising. I believe in her integrity and character, but yeah, it's all the things they're all talking about. They want to make healthcare more affordable. It's like, okay, well, if we all had a magic wand, that would, that's one of those things that's like, we would all like that. Who can actually get it done? And sometimes I want to hear them talk about that, but I'm like, no, campaigning is not the time to get into that, because people don't have the appetite to listen to that much
Well,
detail.
unless you've got, again, the 3-word slogan, in this case of that example, Medicare for all. And you've got candidates who are, that's me, I'm Medicare for all. And then there's others who try to be a bit more nuanced and say, well, as much as we can get close to it, but, well, again, you've lost them because people like the bumper sticker slogans. And I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying it's a lot easier to campaign on little or no promises, like Kristin just said.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fascinated by the data center issue in this
Yes.
larger primary, though, because we have, there's been so much talk over the last couple of years about, hey, this is a big issue. This is, dividing the electorate in, kind of unconventional ways. This is an issue that cuts across traditional political lines in different senses. The Marquette did extensive polling on this last year. And I think the fact that Hong is the only candidate in the Democratic field who is for a data center moratorium, I think is the number one reason that she is moving up in the primary and that she is becoming a real contender and could win the primary. I think it's the number one reason. I think the fact that she is standing out on this is a galvanizing issue for people in urban areas, rural areas, suburban areas, whatever it might be. And there was that anecdote in the New York Times feature last week that she was talking to, somebody who was a Trump voter who now has a Hong sign in his yard because she is against data centers. And I think the fact that you talked about, the different candidates, Barnes, Crowley, Royce, they all have these like very smart, nuanced positions on this. And those positions might be right. Like you might not want to, you might stifle other versions of development if you're doing across the board moratorium. You might do this, that, and the other. Well, okay, do you want to be right or do you want to win?
Right.
Because I think there is at least some wiggle room in what a moratorium might, constitute if you were actually to put that in practice too. So are you or are you not against this? I think the fact that, there was that form a couple of weeks ago that we've referenced before, the red or green answer, are you for a data center moratorium? I think that is the biggest thing in the Hong campaign's advantage right now. I think it's the number one reason that they're doing well, because they were the first to adopt this data center moratorium position, and no other candidate has gone there.
Well, the genius of it is in the word. She supports a moratorium, not a ban. She said, we need to put a halt on this until we know more about the issue. Had she come out of the gates with a data center ban, she would have opened herself up to the criticisms of, hey, wait, it's not like we're going to be using the internet less. These construction jobs are going to go somewhere. How can we do this responsibly? She didn't. She said, we're hitting the pause button on this thing. She never has to unpause it, but by not embracing a ban, she really helped herself, being the first out of the gate to say that she wanted to see a moratorium.
Medicare for all, data center moratorium. It's the same thing. It's how you message it to the people, because the people, like we've all said, the complexity gets lost. But I believe that a lot of the candidates have something that is something like a data center moratorium in their plan, but they just want to explain it to you. And as we all know, if you're explaining, you're losing.
Yeah. And I think, we talked about this, and going back to the McMorrow thing, like we all know what some of the things that Fran really stands for and stands out on. And I'm not talking about like the baseline Democratic policies that we expect anybody running as a Democrat to support: reproductive freedom, cheaper healthcare, things like that. What are the others? Are there any of the other candidates that stand out to you as something they stand for?
It's not so much what they stand for. It's basically their experience. David Crowley's coming at this from the experience of being a county executive. Kelda Roy's coming at it from the experience of being a legislator who, as she says, I don't have ideas. I have bills that have been passed into law. So they all have the different toolkits. But as far as, the big differences on positions, I don't know that people can identify much of any.
That's the thing. There's been so many of these candidate forums, and there's, obviously I hosted one of those, and so many of the responses were fairly similar on issues like healthcare, childcare, education, just like the bread and butter Democratic issues. And there's not that much, nuance in, okay, everybody's for a Badger Care public option. Everybody's for fully funding special education. Everybody's for, whatever it might be in some of those issues. So I think it's hard to distinguish because it's, they're all Democrats and they're all going to agree on so many of the big things. And so for all of these like progressive versus moderate debates that we've been having since Hillary versus Bernie 10 years ago, there's like 85% of it between the two that everybody agrees on. And so you're really like having these debates on the margins of so much of it.
Here's where I think then, if you go, well, then what's the difference? I would come back to that conversation I had with Representative Kristin Phelps from Eau Claire, who's one of the members of the legislature who identifies himself as a democratic socialist. And I said, put this in plain English. What does it mean? And he said, basically, we're just not going to settle. So when you see somebody describing themselves like a democratic socialist or being as colorful as Francesca Hong, what they're telling you is, we're not going to, if we want 90% special education funding, for example, we're not going to settle at 50 or 35 for that matter. We are going to push harder for the things that we want. And it doesn't mean that a more plain spoken incrementalist. It doesn't mean like a Sarah Rodriguez wouldn't fight for 90%, but people look at a Francesca Hong and going, wow, she is going to fight for that 90%. Again, it comes down to that whole nuance and I hate this word, vibe.
I was going to say, I think it's totally a vibe, and everybody is trying to figure out how they can collect that vibe. And that's why we're starting to see the attacks. We've seen Kelda go on the attack. We saw Mandela go on the attack against Sarah, and then Sarah snap back and say that he left the position so that he could lose a Senate race. I mean, they are starting to get spicy just so that they can get people's attention, because all the stuff that they're talking about is so important. It really is very important, but it's boring to hear it, especially at this stage in the game.
Yeah, there was a headline from Wisconsin Public Radio last week. Wisconsin Democratic primary for governor turns negative. That was mostly about the kind of spat between Barnes and Rodriguez about funding from We Energies, just different approaches on different things. And that was before the Hassan Piker, dust up and all of that created. And so I think there is this kind of like interesting micro primary happening between Mandela Barnes and Sarah Rodriguez. And when I was able to take a look at some of the data in that internal poll that I obtained a few weeks back from the Sarah Rodriguez camp, the poll taken by the Sarah Rodriguez camp, is that the second place voters for many of these candidates, are a factor in kind of like where the attacks are going to go. So Sarah Rodriguez going after Mandela Barnes may reflect that the second choice for a lot of Mandela Barnes voters is Sarah Rodriguez. Attacks going from Barnes to Rodriguez would reflect the vice versa for that, right? And so I think that's why you're seeing some of the back and forth between those campaigns and why those campaigns didn't go after Hong. Because I think there are not a lot of second places among the Hong supporters right now. I think the people who are supporting Francesca Hong are going to be supporting her and are not moving anywhere between now and August 11th. I think there is the potential for some movement, between the and potential Mandela Barnes supporters and potential Sarah Rodriguez supporters, which is why you're seeing this back and forth on issues like energy and what's going, contributions from We Energies and whatever that might entail. And there's some nuance to those issues. Like if you're going to criticize, Rodriguez for this, you should also criticize Tony Evers for taking the same types of contributions. And just like once you get into the rabbit hole of like funding nonsense, it gets a little bit, shall we say, discombobulating. But
I saw you did that.
But I think it just goes to reflect kind of like where these competitions within this big field primary are taking place.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go after Fran Hong. I mean, her supporters are so
Mhm.
fearless. So if
Mhm.
you say something about Fran that is not flattering online, it is like a swarm of bees attacking you. And I think Sarah Rodriguez's fans are not that way. They are much more like, oh, we're going to sit back and, like, I really like her. So it is a lot of it has to do with who your posse is and how they themselves are reacting to the environment.
Yeah, and that's what we saw in the Senate race when Mallory McMorrow tried to kind of go after her opponent for campaigning with Hassan. I mean, they came back hard, and I think that ultimately was probably the turning point, and then it kind of continued to go downhill after that. So I think, yes, part of Mandela and Sarah Rodriguez attacking each other is, trying to differentiate each other. But I do agree with Kristin, too. Like, they don't want to poke the bear that is uh, the Hong Hive, as I think
The Hong
Kristen Bry
Hive.
just
I knew
said it
Hive was going to
recently to
show up
me.
eventually. We have a hive.
And which I think is yeah, and they don't need to differentiate themselves from her anyways, so they're just
Mm-mm.
kind of it's going to be interesting to see. Yeah, now Barnes and Rodriguez. I mean, you guys, we only have a month left, first of all. People have gotten their mail-in ballots now. And you saw in Michigan, people had already, yep, there's Pat's. People had already voted for McMorrow, and now they have to put out instructions. If you did, you can change your vote. You have to jump through these hoops. Like, we don't have all day.
No, I've always used the analogy of Olympic speed skating. The races where it's like it's a 12-lap race, and so like the first 10 laps are ridiculously slow. The 11th picks up, and the 12th is just this crazy mad scramble. And I can't believe more people don't have lose their legs with those sharp blades. And that's what it's going to be. Is the final lap in this thing is going to be ridiculous. It will probably feature one or two more people dropping out, causing the same issues that we've seen previously when candidates get out. And it can get rather negative. And then the question becomes, when the dust settles and somebody comes out of that, to what degree does the rest of Wisconsin's left of center voters unite behind them? Or is it lukewarm, and that makes the difference in a close loss to a Tom Tiffany? Like you said, 5 weeks. Nobody's putting it into overdrive yet.
I think it's going to be a real, once we see the finance reports come out in the middle of this month, that will be a game changer. And I suspect
Will
we'll
it?
start to see some folks. I think so. And there are some people who just don't seem to be breaking through. And I would be really surprised if those folks didn't start thinking about dropping out.
That's
But
why
go
Joe
ahead.
Brennan was putting, a lot into ads. He knew based on previous polling, this was his time. He had to shoot his shot. He's running the ads, and if they're connecting, we're going to see them in a poll real soon, or they're going to release a poll real soon, or they're going to release fundraising numbers really soon. But if not, that's what he had to do. And David Crowley's going to reach that point real soon. Kelda Royce is going to reach that point. Will any of them drop out? Yeah, one or two maybe. But as far as, does that make it any clearer which of the top 2 or 3 will come away with it? No, I think we're going to be left guessing right up until, the numbers come in on election night.
Mm-hmm. Is anybody here voting early?
Yes.
I also have my
Always.
ballot, but I keep
Always.
looking
Almost
at
always,
it
yeah.
like I just can't, not right now.
No.
Mine is
Too much
actually
in
born of a
flux.
story when running for Congress in 2012. And one of the things that you have to do when you run for an office like that is, along with all the other fundraising you're doing, some of that money you're raising, well, actually a lot of it, you're giving to a private detective to investigate you, to see what they can come up with. And I'll never forget the call that we got. My manager took it. We were in the car. She's like, really? Okay. Well, and then she turns to me and says, did you really not vote in the 2004 presidential election? And I said, well, if that's what they got on me, yeah, guilty, because the day got so crazy at the TV station, I could never get away to vote. And I resolved at that point I was always going to vote early, because you never know what's going to happen on election day. So you never know. Any one of you might be running, and candidate for U.S. Senate Kate Duffy 2028's got to hire that private detective. So
They
don't miss
find a
voting
lot
this
more
year.
than just me not voting in 2004, I'll tell you that. Um, And I don't even need it probably doesn't even need to be a private detective. Anybody who's just very good at sleuthing on the internet could write a whole Oppo report on me, I'm sure.
Kate will
No,
be
and
like,
I'm a big
yeah, just wait
proponent
for
of
the whole book
voting.
to come out.
Yeah, right. I'm a big proponent of voting early too. It's not because I don't trust it this time. It's just because like things, I just do feel like things are going to be changing. And then the Michigan, I do want to kind of see what happens in Michigan, and that's only a week ahead of ours. But here's the other thing, because I had posed a question on my stories about like, to me, and I was acknowledging that it could be my algorithm or the fact that I'm in Wisconsin, but it doesn't seem like there's as much pearl clutching in Michigan with Abdul as there is with some people from the establishment with Fran here, and wondering why that was. And um, I got some like interesting notes, but a lot of people, like some people reminded me who were from Michigan and sent me notes. They're like, well, we've already had a Dem trifecta. So we're like a bit more primed for this. I think people like maybe find it a bit more palatable. Why are you laughing?
Kristen's
We've already had a
giving me
Dem
la-di-da.
trifecta, so
We
I
had
don't
a
know what you guys are
trifecta.
doing over there.
Like, well, guess what?
No,
We
she
are way
just-
overdue, Michigan.
Sorry, I
Give
can't
us our
help myself.
chance.
I
Just
love you
that, like,
people.
they're maybe a little less purple than us, a little further ahead. Although it's still a very moderate Dem trifecta, or have been, and he has been known in the community for a long time. I mean, it's not apples to apples, but there still are some insights I think we could maybe glean from what happens with that race, which is only a week ahead of ours. So I don't know. I know last time we talked, though, there was some comments of people felt like we were beating around the bush and they just wanted us to tell who we were voting for. And I just want to say, I actually don't know yet.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know either. And actually, I'll tease something I'm doing at the recombobulation area this week with that too. I'm going to be conducting a ranked choice voting experiment at the recombobulation area
awesome.
with the Democratic field. So I'm working with Marquette University researcher John Johnson, who works with the Marquette poll and does a bunch of other research there. So I have an actual expert that's helping me. It's not just me at the recombobulation area. So there will be some expertise behind this, but I think that would be really an interesting look at the race if people were to rank the candidates instead of just vote for the one. I would be interested to see how it lines up with some of the straw polls that we're seeing, because I think the recombobulation area subscribers is a little bit more of an insidery subscriber base than maybe just the general electorate. I'm interested to see if some of like the, I guess, bottom three candidates might rank a little bit higher when you're looking at this a little bit differently, and just how, people might view this if voting a different way instead of just marking your ballot for your one candidate.
I think that's going to be fascinating. I can't wait.
It will be
That's a
fascinating.
great idea.
I feel like we could probably maybe predict sort of what it might be, and I don't know if it changes much for the bottom three.
I feel like
mean,
anything online is going to be Fran. Anything that requires any sort of online participation is going to be Fran. And it's the same thing for the prediction markets.
Yeah,
it's the same thing for the prediction markets. The people who are actually investing in these prediction markets, which are like stocks. You're trading stocks. You're buying stock in the fact that your candidate is going to win. I think it's the same thing. The people who are paying attention and who are on the vanguard are going to be Fran people.
and not that they're a tiny block. They're not. But I am always reminded from my time in the legislature serving with State Senator John Erpenbach, who told us all the time the people we should be keeping in mind. The way he put it are the little old ladies who got nothing better to do but vote. There's a whole lot of people who are not terminally online. They go to work or they're retired or what have you, and they go vote, and they are not doing this, which is not to take anything away from what Dan or the rest of us are doing online. But yeah, the whole reason there's a big block of undecided voters isn't that they're all sitting around, like we are, kicking around a bunch of good options. They honestly don't know the options, and they're going to be late deciders and probably not online.
Yeah, probably reading the letters to the editor in the local paper and trying to familiarize, because there's still, my mother asked me like 2 weeks ago, who watches all of my content closely. She's like, is Mandela gonna join the race I'm like, Mom, it's like crazy,
Kate's parents give her notes after every performance.
It's, like, interesting to see the questions that come out of their mouths after watching all my content. I'm like, "Okay, so, yeah, I do need to be talking about this a lot more, evidently." Um, yeah,
Reminds me,
he's in the race.
so
That's great.
Wisconsin Watch now has just today, I think, issued a voter's guide where you can plug in your address and all of the candidates are there. They reached out to every single candidate, state ledge and federal, in this across the state. They got much more of a response from the Democrats than they did from the Republican candidates. But there is a voter guide that's out there that will make it easier for you to know what's on your ballot and where the people stand. Although that stuff tends to be a little generic, don't you think?
Yeah. Well, I would say so we talk about the governor all the time, but we also have the possibility of a Dem trifecta, and there are a handful of key seats that we either need to protect or flip in order to do that. And there's some really important primaries there as well. And I am also, I guess, probably undecided on I live in one of those key districts and I'm like a bit undecided. There's a forum coming up that I'm definitely going to go to and see the different candidates in conversation together and see, again, I know they're not going to vary much on policy positions, but I think seeing them talk to each other and answer the audience questions is a pretty good indicator of how, like, if I feel like there's somebody who can get something done, can be trusted, things like that. So I think it just requires more work. You have to make sure you know which Senate district or Assembly district you're in, if it is one of those key seats. And then you have to kind of go, because there's different groups that put on these forums, right? You have to kind of just maybe go to the candidates' Facebook pages or websites and see when they're going to be showing up in places. It's a little more digging, but it is worth it to see who's running in those races, because that is like the other half of the piece that we need to get done in November.
But that's a message you're still trying to get out there at Motherhood for Good.
Yeah.
Is, you got to plug in. You got to
Mhm.
look at these candidates' pages and that's a lift sometimes for busy parents.
It is, and that's part of, like, people have been asking me about it, and I'm like, I gotta get a Substack up, and I do, and people need quick things to read through, but also you just gotta do you gotta do the research yourself too, when you can. I know
And
it's dull sometimes.
we can have these conversations. We can have these conversations on our Substacks, on our social medias, like to our audience who's listening out there and you're thinking, but I have a question. Ask the question. We will address it. We'll address it in the recombobulation area, Motherhood for Good, UpNorth News. I'll address it. We might even talk about it next week. We're going to do this next week again, aren't we?
I hope so.
Somebody's got to.
We can't not.
Make it a standing date.
Yeah. And to your point, Kate, on the legislative issues, as the guy who writes, only guy crazy enough to write a preview of every single race on the ballot in the Wisconsin state legislature, I'm already starting a little bit of my prep work for that. And there are some interesting primaries that are coming up. There are a lot clustered in the southeastern Wisconsin area in Milwaukee. There are a number of folks challenging incumbents in assembly races in and around Milwaukee. There are a few really important open races. So, yeah, there's going to be, it's not just the Democratic governor's race, although that is, of course, enormously consequential and is the big ticket item. There are these state legislative primaries that we should all be paying attention to. So maybe something coming soon at the recombobulation area for that, TBD. But also some congressional primaries that are happening. There was some news today on one of those in the 7th congressional district. There was an AP story on Sean Duffy's 26-year-old son-in-law, Michael Alfonso?
Alfonso,
Mhm.
yes.
Yeah.
It's Michael Alfonso Washington or Jefferson, because he was comparing himself to them, saying that, they too were only 26 years old when they first engaged in public service in the country. Oh, well, pardon us. By all means, let's anoint you to becoming a member of Congress, which is exactly what his father-in-law and family are trying to have done.
Did they also live in Florida? Just asking for a friend.
Yeah, I haven't even had to talk much shit about him because the right-wing people on Twitter seem to be taking care of it. I mean,
Well, they are. They
for
are.
us.
And that is to be expected, because again, we've seen it in Democratic circles as well. When somebody tries to, come in like, it's nobody's business and basically cut in line, people notice, and it's not unanimous at all. There are some county Republican Party chairs in the 7th District going, who the hell is this guy? No disrespect to your son-in-law, former Congressman Duffy, but who the hell is he to be on the ballot when you've got these other people who may have more experience and spent more time, recently in the district?
Yeah,
Can you
it's
imagine
very
what the
nepo
news?
baby.
Yeah.
Can you imagine
very.
what the news cycle would be if there was a nepo baby Democratic candidate comparing himself to George Washington and Thomas Jefferson? Can you imagine? I always, there's some of those like whataboutism, put the shoe on the other foot stories are kind of nonsense. This seems like one of those. It's just like, can you imagine how insane people would be going if it was like a Democratic former congressman's son comparing himself to George Washington and Thomas Jefferson? It'd
Dan,
be ridiculous.
My brain is broken from the number of times I've brought that up, where I'd say, how a newsroom would cover something if a Democrat had said or done these things. And it's absolutely insane. And this is just the latest example where, again, using the Steve Bannon, theory of just put it in a big old flow of shit and put it all out there. They don't have time to decide which one they want to fight. This is just one of many things they put out there and think, well, nobody's going to have time to say, who is this guy? Because we got other things to talk about right now.
Yeah. And Trump has endorsed him, right?
Yes.
He did, but I don't even know that he knew when he did, because
I'm sure that he did not.
That's been written up extensively, I think, by Politico, about the way that people in the White House were very bothered at the way Sean Duffy was in the White House browbeating the president when he's supposed to be talking about things related to the Department of Transportation, the companies that he's supposed to regulate, but he's shaking down for that cross-country road trip, et cetera, et cetera. But he did get Trump to say, yeah, I guess so. And I have a feeling that if Michael Alfonso does not win, the first time anybody asks Donald Trump about him, he'll go, do the Mariah Carey meme. I don't know him. I don't know who that was.
My people do things sometimes.
Yes. Yep.
That's not a stretch for Trump right now. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the Democrats in that race? There are 3 strong Dems in that race. There are 3 Dems in the 8th CD primary, which we haven't had a primary in 2 decades. There are 2 or 3 in the 6th. It is crazy to see in these congressional seats where we have had to struggle to get anybody to step up and run. They're having primaries in almost everyone. I think the 5th is the only one where there's just a Democrat running. That, to me, is a huge indicator of enthusiasm, of a desire for change, and I think it's going to be reflected in voter turnout.
I sure hope so,
Absolutely.
because again, in most of the cases, these things have not been acrimonious, like up here in the 7th District. You have Fred Clark, the former Democratic legislator. You have Ginger Murray. You have Chris Armstrong, all good people. And, Democrats will have no problem rallying around one of them as the nominee. It's the thing I hope happens in the 3rd District with Becca Cook and Emily Berge facing off against one another, because they have to. But you don't, except for that race, I think you see in all these other races, no problem with Democratic unity and helping the independent voters there tap into their frustrations and say, just because this district sent, Scott Fitzgerald year after year, or Glenn Grothman year after year, doesn't mean we have to keep doing it. We don't have to send Brian Stile back. We don't have to send Tony Weed back.
Yeah.
No. And Glenn especially. I mean, I don't know how that guy has held on to this Congress seat for so long, but I don't know if you guys saw the viral video of those teachers razzing him. That just made my weekend. That made me feel American, I got to tell you.
That is the reason that people keep sending him back to Congress, because he shows up. He is the one Republican in Wisconsin who comes to every picnic, every parade. He is
Damn it, Kristin,
always
don't say
there.
that. Don't be saying that.
But it's true. I mean, he's all disheveled and his shirt tail is hanging out, and these teachers are swearing at him about all the votes that he's taken that have ruined their lives. And, he's just standing there trying to eat his hot dog, because I think that he actually shows up for the food. But people like it and they know him. That presence really means something in a district like that.
In a district that red. I mean, he would not stand a prayer of a chance in a purple district. Just as I would say, we talk about Democratic Socialists and things like, AOC is not winning the 7th congressional district race. I don't care how good she is. She's not winning that race. Glenn Grothman's not winning outside of his district. So again, he's got I don't know how many words I can say on this program. No cares to give.
If you haven't seen that video, though, that Kate referenced, it's a lesson in accountability, because it is these teachers at a picnic literally telling him what he has done wrong, and he's just kind of standing there taking it. And if every single one of us could do that when we have an encounter with one of these people, and, we don't have to be rotten, but just, no, I'm not going to vote for you, and here's why. And also, I want to take a video so other people can see why. Because a lot of people don't know. They don't understand. They're not the inside baseball people that we are.
And those teachers had lived that experience, so they were not about to let him gaslight them. And I think that is important to witness as people, because a lot of what we hear are literally just from the politicians from both sides, and or like the IEs and different groups who are saying things. And it's validating to feel like stuff isn't right, and then to hear teachers say, no, this is our experience. No, you're not telling it like it is. This is how it went down. That is like really powerful moment, I think. And so hopefully we can get more of those. And I thought also Emily Sefos, who's running for state senate up in Neenah area-ish, Fox Valley.
Fox Valley.
Yeah. Yeah. To put up a video of herself at the 4th of July parade, and she had herself mic'd up, going around talking to people and just being like talking to Republicans and putting herself out there. And guess what? The video's going viral. People love it because A, it's just nice to see some humanity. But B, I think a lot of people just like don't even know what to say to people who may not agree with them, or when they're approaching people. And just seeing her say it over and over again, and again with the modeling, she's just showing how she's talking to people and showing up. People loved that. And I thought it was, I mean, we all know her. She's so great. Like, I thought it was now like there's a lot more people recognizing how great she is. I thought that was a really cool moment.
Shout out to Recombobulation Area contributor Emily Sefos. And I also had the opportunity to tag along with her when she was running for state assembly a couple of years ago, and she was going door to door in rural areas, which is much more difficult than going door to door in my neighborhood in the west side of Milwaukee, where you can just walk down the street and hit 12 different houses. It's get in your car, drive a mile, get out, and all of that. And just like she took such an interesting approach. And yeah, that was in a story that I wrote back in during the 2024 campaign called that I talked to Kristin, Dr. Lyerly here for as part of that campaign too. So, unconventional approaches to reaching people and audiences, I think, is something that folks have to tap into. And I think more and more, and we're seeing examples of it every day.
You got to show up. I mean, that was when I won very narrowly in 2006 over an incumbent Republican. I mean, part of the credit I thought had to go with that decision to go into Clark County, deeply red Clark County. And people go, well, this is your walk list. And I'm like, no, I'm going farm to farm, today. And I did that several days, like you said. And people were like, nobody's ever come to my door before asking for my vote, ever.
Yeah.
People just want you to show up at these things and not be fake, just be you. And, I really hope that pays off for Emily and everybody else who's so much more authentic than the bunch we have in office right now.
Emily says she gets that a lot too. People say nobody's Democrat or Republican has never been out this way. And I think, we talk about name recognition being an indicator. When people go to vote, they recognize a name, but also people, if you're going to meet people where they're at and you have an interaction with them, people will remember that when they go to vote. Even if it was somebody from the other party, if they were like pleasant, respectful, you had a nice conversation, they're going to remember that. Even if it's one of your volunteers who was lovely. Those interactions really stick with people, I think, more than we realize.
Emily told story after story during her assembly campaign in the last cycle about doors she knocked, conversations she had, common ground they found, and then she'd leave a sign in their yard right next to the Donald Trump sign. And people just wanted to know who she was. They just trusted her because she was willing to go that extra mile and have that conversation. They believed in her.
I believe in her too.
I do too. Let's get her
She's
elected.
running in a tough district, but it's people like that who are just give me hope and are so good to watch because everybody deserves representation, whether no matter how close she gets, it's important for her to show that there's somebody fighting for their values in the community where she lives in the surrounding areas. And I think that's a really important part of politics.
I wanted to point out one thing that I think are issues that all of us have talked about or commented on or been a part of in some capacity. It's a little bit of a case of good news, bad news. So the bad news was that childcare counts essentially ended at the end of June. And the good news is that postpartum Medicaid expansion began at the beginning of July. You guys have all been a part of that in varying degrees, and from the delivery room to activism to all of that. Any of you have any thoughts you could share?
Dan, please don't forget. Yeah, please don't forget. I'm teeing up Kristin here. Please don't forget it got done because of those magnanimous Republicans who one night in February, and I just looked back at the press conference, got together and said, we care so much that after 7 years, we're going to finally let this bill come up for a vote. And now they're running as if they were somehow the heroes of passing postpartum extension for Medicaid. And I asked Kristin about it on my program. And Kristin, you look like you feel just as strongly now as you did then of what you'd want to tell those legislators, those Republicans campaigning on this issue.
You don't get to take fucking credit for this. We have been trying to save moms' lives for 7 years, and you and the people in your party stood in our way, and moms died. Moms got sick. Families were affected. Communities were affected because you were playing politics with people's health. So no, when you're out on the campaign trail and you're taking credit for postpartum Medicaid extension, we are going to find you and we are going to shut you down. That's a promise. Ding.
Cut.
There's your social clip.
I was going to say, we ran that all weekend of her saying,
I'm okay, honey.
You
I
can
was
go
just
to hell.
doing a thing on the podcast. It's like, you okay? Just enthusiastic. Exactly. It got done. That's what matters. And it is starting. But you are so spot on, Kristin. And that is a perfect way to end this conversation. It's been fun. Nightmare blunt rotation.
Thanks, everyone. Subscribe to the Recombobulation Area. We got a sale going on right now. Back to being independent.
Dan is back full time with Recombobulation Area. So check it out. And we'll see you next week.